The research station Kepler 442 drifted in the cold darkness of space like a metal island. Its lights blinked slowly as it orbited the hostile world below. Captain Jiwan stood at the main viewport watching the alien planet spin beneath them. The surface glowed red and orange with volcanic activity. Nothing could live down there. But something did. "Captain, the Velkan ships are approaching," said Minji from her station. Her voice was steady, but Jiwan could hear the fear underneath. She was their cultural specialist and had spent months studying what little they knew about the Velkan Empire. Most of it was not good news. Jiwan turned from the window. His crew of 4 stood around the command center looking nervous. They had good reason to be. No human had ever met a Velkan face to face and lived to tell about it. The stories that reached Earth spoke of reptilian warriors who conquered worlds for sport. Their empire stretched across 12 star systems. They had never lost a war. "How long until they duck?" Jiwan asked. 15 minutes, replied Seokmin. The young engineer was checking his tablet for the 10th time in 5 minutes. His hands shook slightly as he scrolled through the docking procedures. The station AI confirms their following standard approach patterns. No weapons are active. Dong-hyuk looked up from his equipment. The xenobiologist had set up several scanning devices around the room. "I'm reading some interesting data from their ships. Their hull composition suggests they prefer much hotter environments than we do. The temperature in the meeting room might need adjustment." "Already handled," said Yeri. The medical officer had been quietly making preparations for the last hour. "I've also prepared emergency medical supplies." "Just in case," Jiwan nodded. His team was good. They had trained for this mission for 2 years. But all their training was based on guesswork and rumors. The Velkans had agreed to this meeting only because they were curious about humans. Earth's first contact protocols demanded caution. The Velkan response had been simple. "We will meet these new creatures. If they prove interesting, we will talk. If not, we will leave. Remember the briefing," Jiwan said to his team. "We're here to establish peaceful relations. We show them that humanity is worth talking to. We don't provoke them. We don't show weakness. We find middle ground." "What if they don't want middle ground?" asked Minji. She had studied every piece of data about Velkan culture that Earth intelligence could gather. "Everything we know suggests they only understand strength and submission. There's no middle ground in their society." "Then we make one," Jiwan replied. He had spent years in Earth's diplomatic corps before volunteering for this mission. He had dealt with difficult negotiations before, but nothing had prepared him for this. The station shuddered slightly as the Velkan ships attached to the docking ports. Red lights flashed as the airlocks began their connection sequence. Jiwan's team gathered their equipment and headed toward the meeting room. The corridors felt longer than usual. Atmospheric readings show their breathing a nitrogen-oxygen mix similar to ours. Dong-hyuk reported as they walked. "Higher temperature and humidity than we prefer, but tolerable. Their ships show elevated radiation levels, probably from their homeworld's hotter sun." They reached the meeting room. It was a large circular space with a conference table in the center. The lighting was adjustable. The walls displayed star charts and peaceful images from Earth. Everything had been designed to seem non-threatening. "Final equipment check," Jiwan ordered. Each team member confirmed their gear was ready. Translation devices, recording equipment, emergency beacons. Harry had medical scanners hidden in her sleeve. Seokmin carried a tablet with technical specifications about human technology. Minji had cultural gifts from Earth, art and music samples. Dong-hyuk had biological samples of human hair and skin cells for analysis if the Velkans wanted them. The outer airlock hissed open. Heavy footsteps echoed through the corridor. Not the light steps of humans, but the deliberate thud of something much larger. Jiwan felt his heart rate increase. His training told him to stay calm. His instincts told him to run. The door to the meeting room opened. 3 figures entered. They were nothing like the artistic renditions Earth's analysts had created. The Velkans were taller than humans by at least 2 feet. Their scaled skin shifted between deep green and black depending on the light. Their heads were elongated with powerful jaws filled with sharp teeth. Yellow eyes tracked every movement in the room. The largest Velkan wore what appeared to be armor made from some kind of metal. Decorative marks covered the plates. This had to be their leader. The second Velkan was slightly smaller, but moved with fluid grace that suggested deadly speed. The third carried equipment that looked like recording devices, but it was the middle Velkan that made Jiwan's blood run cold. Something was wrong with the way it moved. Too smooth. too controlled, like a predator that had never known fear. When it looked at the humans, its head tilted slightly, the way a snake might study a mouse before striking. I am Warprime Kelthor of the Velkan Empire, the largest one spoke. Its voice was deep and carried an odd clicking sound. The translation device worked perfectly. These are my advisors. You are the creatures called humans. I am Captain Jiwan of Earth, Jiwan replied. He kept his voice steady and calm. These are my specialists. We come in peace, seeking friendship between our peoples. Kelthor's eyes narrowed. Peace? Friendship? These are strange concepts. We came because you traveled between stars without our knowledge. This suggests you have strength. We wish to see this strength for ourselves. Our strength lies in our ability to build and explore, Minji said carefully. We seek knowledge and cooperation with other species. The middle Velkan stepped forward. Its movement was liquid smooth. When it spoke, its voice was softer but somehow more threatening. I am Thexvar, first hunter of the Empire. In our experience, species that speak of peace do so because they cannot speak of war. Which are you, small creatures? Prey that hides behind words or predators that lie about their nature? Dongyuk's scanner beeped softly. His face went pale as he read the results. Captain, he whispered, their muscle density is 3 times human normal. Bone structure suggests they could easily break through steel. And their biochemistry shows enhanced reflexes and reaction times. The Velkans heard the whisper. Thexvar smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Your small one reads us correctly. We are hunters. We are warriors. We conquer worlds and claim them for the Empire. Now tell us, humans, what are you? The room fell silent. Outside the viewport, the alien world continued its slow rotation. The volcanic glow painted everything in red light. Jiwan looked at his team. They were scared but standing firm. Good people doing their best in an impossible situation. He turned back to the Velkans. Whatever happened next would determine the future relationship between 2 species. If there was going to be a relationship at all. We are survivors, Jiwan said finally. We are explorers. We are builders. And when necessary, we are fighters. But we prefer to be friends. Kelthor exchanged a look with Thexvar. The hunter's smile grew wider and more dangerous. Then you will not object to proving this claim. The silence in the room stretched like a wire about to snap. Jiwan could feel his team's fear radiating behind him. Thexvar's smile had not faded. If anything, it had grown more predatory. The hunter's yellow eyes studied each human in turn, the way a cat might watch mice in a cage. Warprime Kelthor stepped forward. His armored feet made heavy sounds on the metal floor. In the Velkan Empire, all diplomatic relations begin with understanding. We must know what manner of creature we speak with. Are you prey? Are you predator? Or are you something else entirely? We are a peaceful species, Minji said quickly. Her cultural training told her to emphasize humanity's non-aggressive nature. We resolve conflicts through discussion and compromise. Kelthor's head tilted. The gesture looked alien and disturbing on his reptilian features. Peaceful. Yet you travel between stars and ships that could be weapons. Peaceful. Yet you arrived here without fear of entering our territory. This seems contradictory. Dongyuk stepped forward with his scanner still beeping softly. We came here because we believe different species can learn from each other. Our science could benefit your people. Your knowledge could help us understand the galaxy better. Thexvar made a sound that might have been laughter. It was a low hissing that made the human skin crawl. Science, knowledge, these are tools, small one. But tools are only as strong as the hand that holds them. A weak hand makes any tool useless. Our hands are not weak, Jiwan said calmly. He had dealt with bullies before. The key was not to show fear, but also not to provoke unnecessary conflict. We have survived on a difficult world. We have built civilizations. We have reached for the stars and found them. Survival is not strength, Kelthor replied. Many prey animals survive. They hide in holes and breed quickly to replace their losses. This is not the survival we respect. The third Velkan, who had remained silent, finally spoke. His voice was higher than the others, but no less threatening. I am Recorder Vexthan. I document first contact protocols for the Empire. In our history, we have met 47 species among the stars. 32 were prey that we consumed or enslaved. 12 were weak predators that we conquered and absorbed into our empire. 3 were strong predators that we made alliance with through combat. Combat, Seokman whispered. His face had gone pale. They want to fight us, Thexvar heard the whisper. He moved with that liquid grace again, crossing the room in 3 swift steps. He stopped directly in front of Seokman. The young engineer barely came up to the alien's chest. Your small one speaks wisdom. Yes, we want to fight you, not to destroy but to understand. A species reveals its true nature only when facing death. Hieri stepped protectively closer to Seokman. Our nature is to heal, not harm. I am a medical officer. I save lives, not take them. Noble words, Kelthor said, but words are wind. Actions show truth. In Velkan culture, respect must be earned through the trial of blades. One of your people will face one of ours in single combat. The outcome will determine how our species interact. Ji-won felt his stomach drop. He had hoped to avoid this moment, but his briefings had warned him it might come. What are the terms of this trial? Thexfar's smile returned. Simple. 2 warriors enter the combat circle. Only one leaves standing. The victor's species gains respect. The loser's species gains nothing. That's murder, Minji said, her voice shaking. We don't solve problems by killing each other. Then you are prey, Thexfar replied without emotion. Prey hides from conflict. Prey hopes predators will ignore them. Prey dies when predators grow hungry. Recorder Vexthon activated a device on his arm. A holographic display appeared showing images of various alien species. The Kethavari tried to refuse the trial of blades. They spoke of peace and harmony. Their world now serves as a farming colony for our empire. The Dralthek challenged us and lost. They serve as warriors in our fleet, earning honor through service. The mighty Zorkane defeated our champion and won a treaty of equals. Which path will humans choose? Ji-won looked at his team. Dong-hyuk was running calculations on his tablet, probably trying to figure out if humans had any chance against Velkan physiology. Seokman was backing slowly toward the wall, his engineering mind recognizing an impossible problem. Hieri stood firm, but her medical training made her rebel against unnecessary violence. Minji was frantically reviewing her cultural files, looking for any alternative. If we refuse? Ji-won asked. Then you are prey, Kelthor stated. Your ships will be escorted from our territory. Your species will be marked as inferior. If we encounter humans again, we will treat them as food animals or slaves. If we accept and lose, then you are weak predators, Thexfar answered. Your species will serve our empire. You will have honor in service, but no freedom in choice. And if we win, for the first time, Kelthor showed something that might have been respect. Then you are strong predators worthy of treaty. Your species will be recognized as equals of the empire. Trade, knowledge, and alliance become possible. Ji-won closed his eyes for a moment. The weight of his entire species' future pressed down on him. Every human who would ever live among the stars depended on what happened in the next few minutes. Who would fight for the Velkans? He asked. Thexfar stepped forward. His scales rippled in a pattern that seemed aggressive. I am first hunter of the empire. My blade has tasted the blood of champions from 12 species. I have never been defeated. I have never shown mercy. He raised his right arm. With a soft mechanical whir, a blade extended from his forearm. It was 2 feet long and glowed with a faint blue light. This is a molecular blade. It can cut through your ship's hull as easily as your flesh. The blade hummed with energy. The air around it seemed to shimmer. Ji-won realized he was looking at a weapon that could slice him in half without resistance. Who fights for humanity? Kelthor asked. Ji-won's team looked at him with desperate hope. They knew he had military training, but none of them understood the full extent of his background. He had not told them everything about his past. He stepped forward. I do. Thexfar's eyes gleamed with anticipation. Excellent. A leader who fights for his people shows wisdom. You may choose your weapon from our armory, or bring weapons from your ship. The trial will begin in 1 standard hour. 1 hour to prepare for death, Recorder Vexthan added helpfully. I will document your species' final moments with honor. As the Velkans left to prepare the combat arena, Ji-won turned to face his terrified team. They looked at him like he had just volunteered to jump into a star. Captain, Minji whispered, what have you done? The door closed behind the Velkans with a soft hiss. For a moment, the humans stood in stunned silence. The weight of what had just happened pressed down on them like gravity from a heavy world. Captain, you can't be serious, Minji said, her voice barely above a whisper. That thing will kill you in seconds. Did you see that blade? Did you see how it moved? Ji-won walked to the viewport and looked out at the stars. His reflection stared back at him, calm and determined. I saw everything I needed to see. Everything you needed to see? Dong-hyuk's voice cracked. Captain, My scans show their muscle density is 3 times ours. Their reaction time is 4 times faster. Their bones are like steel cables. This isn't a fight, it's suicide. Silkman was frantically typing on his tablet. I'm running combat simulations based on the data we collected. Every scenario ends the same way. We lose, you die. Humanity becomes their slaves or food. Hieri moved to stand beside Jiwon. As the medical officer, she had seen plenty of injuries and death. Her training taught her to be realistic about survival odds. Captain, I've read the medical files on your military service. You're good, but you're not superhuman. That creature is built for killing. Jiwon turned from the window. His team saw something in his expression that made them pause. It wasn't fear or resignation. It wasn't false bravado either. It was the look of someone who had made a decision and accepted all its consequences. There are things about my background that weren't in your briefings, he said quietly. Command thought it was better if you didn't know. But now you need to understand who you're working with. He sat down at the conference table. His team gathered around him, desperate for any hope. Before I joined the diplomatic corps, I spent 15 years in Earth's Special Operations Division. Not regular military, the kind of unit that gets sent when regular military isn't enough. I've fought in jungle wars on colony worlds. I've hunted pirates in asteroid fields. I've done things that don't exist in official records. Minji stared at him. The diplomatic files said you had military experience, but they made it sound like you were a desk officer. That was the cover story, Jiwon replied. Command needed someone for this mission who could handle first contact protocols, but also handle situations that went beyond diplomacy. Someone who understood both words and violence. Dongyuk leaned forward. But Captain, even with your training, look at what we're facing. That alien is a professional killer from a warrior species. It has biological advantages we can't match. You're right, Jiwon agreed. I can't match its speed, strength, or reflexes. If I try to fight it the way it expects to be fought, I'll lose in the first 10 seconds. Then how do you plan to win? Hieri asked. Jiwon stood up and began pacing. By not fighting the way it expects. Every species the Velkans have encountered has probably tried to match them in direct combat. Speed against speed, strength against strength. That's why they keep winning. He stopped and looked at each of his team members. But humans didn't become the dominant species on Earth through superior physical abilities. We did it through something else entirely. Tool use, suggested Silkman. Partially. But lots of species use tools. Intelligence? Tried Minji. Closer, but not quite. Dongyuk thought for a moment. Endurance? Persistence hunting? Jiwon smiled for the first time since the Velkans had arrived. Now you're getting it. Humans are persistence hunters. We didn't chase down mammoths by being faster or stronger. We chased them by being more stubborn. We followed them until they collapsed from exhaustion. We turned every hunt into a test of who could last longer. But this is single combat, Hieri pointed out. It's not a marathon. Every fight is a marathon if you make it one, Jiwon replied. That alien expects a quick, decisive battle. It wants to use its superior physical abilities to end things fast. But what if I don't let it end fast? What if I turn this into something it's never faced before? He walked over to his personal equipment bag and began removing items. Not weapons, but simple tools. A length of climbing rope. Industrial adhesive patches. A composite utility knife. A small mirror. Some emergency rations. These are your weapons? Silkman asked incredulously. These are my tools, Jiwon corrected. The Velkans said I could choose weapons from their armory or bring weapons from our ship. They're thinking in terms of swords, guns, energy weapons. They're not thinking about human creativity. Minji was beginning to understand. You're going to improvise. I'm going to adapt, Jiwon said. Every second that fight lasts is a second I'm learning about my opponent. How it moves, how it thinks, what it expects. Meanwhile, it's going to be confused because I'm not behaving like any opponent it's faced before. Dongyuk was accessing his biological data on the Velkans. Their physiology suggests they're built for explosive power, not sustained effort. Like big cats on Earth, they're designed for quick kills, not long battles. Exactly, Jiwon nodded. So I don't give it a quick kill. I make it work for every advantage. I use the environment. I use its expectations against it. I turn this into the kind of fight humans are actually good at. Hieri was preparing a medical kit. What do you need from us? Seokman, I need you to study the station's layout. Find me everything about that combat arena. Gravity, atmosphere, structural weak points, anything I can use. Already on it, the engineer replied, his fingers flying over his tablet. Minji, I need you to watch the Velkans. Learn everything you can about their body language, their customs, their expectations. If you see something that might help, speak up. Understood. Donghyuk, keep scanning them. I want to know about their stamina, their breathing patterns, anything that might give me an edge. I'm recording everything. Hieri, patch me up as best you can after this is over. Assuming there's enough left to patch? There will be, she said firmly. You're coming back alive. Ji-won picked up the climbing rope and began testing its strength. The Velkans see this as a simple equation. Strong beats weak, fast beats slow, but they've never faced a species that makes its own equations. He looked around at his team. They were still scared, but now there was hope mixed with the fear. They were beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, their captain had a chance. One more thing, Ji-won said as he finished checking his equipment. If this goes wrong, if I don't make it back, I want you to remember something. This isn't just about me fighting that alien. This is about showing them what humans really are. We're not the strongest or the fastest, but we're the ones who never give up. He slung his equipment bag over his shoulder and headed toward the door. Where are you going? Minji asked. To meet my opponent, Ji-won replied. It's time to show the galaxy what a human can do. The combat arena was unlike anything Ji-won had expected. The Velkans had transformed the station's main cargo bay into a circular fighting pit. The floor was covered with a strange metallic sand that shifted and moved under his feet. Overhead lights cast everything in harsh white illumination that created deep shadows around the edges. Raised platforms surrounded the arena where both species could observe. Ji-won's team sat together on one side, their faces tight with worry. The Velkans occupied the opposite platform. More of them had arrived from their ships. At least 20 alien warriors now watched with hungry anticipation. War Prime Kelthor stood at the center of the upper platform, like a judge preparing to deliver a death sentence. The trial of blades will now begin. Human Captain Ji-won of Earth faces Thexvar, first hunter of the Velkan Empire. Combat continues until one warrior yields or dies. There are no other rules. Ji-won entered the arena carrying his simple equipment. The metallic sand crunched under his boots. He could feel the weight of every watching eye. Human and alien alike were focused on him with absolute attention. The future of his entire species balanced on what happened in the next few minutes. Thexvar emerged from the opposite entrance, moving like liquid death. The alien had removed his ceremonial armor, and now wore only a simple harness that held additional weapons. His scales rippled with patterns that Ji-won had learned meant excitement and aggression. The molecular blade extending from his right forearm cast blue light across his reptilian features. You brought interesting weapons, small one, Thexvar called across the arena. His voice carried easily in the enclosed space. Rope and adhesive. Are you planning to repair something during our battle? Some of the watching Velkans made that hissing sound that passed for laughter. They found humor in what they saw as a pathetic display. Ji-won said nothing. He was studying his opponent's movement patterns, looking for anything that might give him an advantage. I have killed champions from 12 species, Thexvar continued, beginning to circle the arena's edge. Each one brought their best weapons, their finest armor, their greatest skills. All of them died within moments of our battle beginning. Tell me, human, what makes you think you will be different? Ji-won set down his equipment bag and began removing items. I don't think I'm different, he replied calmly. I think you are. Thexvar paused in his circling. Explain. Every opponent you've faced has tried to beat you at your own game, Ji-won said, tying the climbing rope around his waist. They've tried to be faster, stronger, more deadly, but that's not what humans do best. He picked up the composite knife and tested its balance. It was a good blade, sharp and reliable, but it looked like a toy compared to the alien's molecular weapon. Then what do humans do best? Thexvar asked. There was genuine curiosity in his voice now. We adapt, Ji-won replied. We survive. We find ways to win that nobody expects. Without warning, Thexvar struck. The alien moved faster than anything Ji-won had ever seen. One moment he was 20 feet away. The next he was slashing with the molecular blade in a movement too quick for human eyes to follow. Ji-won barely managed to throw himself sideways. The blade passed through the space where his head had been, leaving a faint blue afterimage. He rolled across the metallic sand and came up in a defensive crouch. First lesson, Thexvar called out, already moving for another attack. Speed kills. The second strike came from a different angle. Ji-won couldn't match the alien's speed, so he didn't try. Instead, he did something unexpected. As Thexvar lunged forward, G1 threw a handful of metallic sand directly at the alien's eyes. Thexvar hissed in surprise and swung blindly. His blade carved through empty air as G1 rolled away again. The human was already moving before the alien cleared his vision. Interesting, Thexvar admitted, blinking rapidly. You fight like prey, but prey with cunning. Second lesson, G1 replied, pulling out one of his adhesive patches. Humans cheat. The third exchange was different. Thexvar approached more cautiously, his blade weaving defensive patterns in the air. But G1 wasn't trying to close distance. Instead, he was using the rope tied around his waist to create a mobile tripline, stretching it between his hands as he moved. When Thexvar lunged again, G1 didn't dodge completely. He let the alien's momentum carry him forward, while stepping aside just enough to avoid the killing blow. The rope caught Thexvar across the chest, and the alien's own speed worked against him as he stumbled. It wasn't enough to knock him down, but it disrupted his perfect balance for just a moment. G1 used that moment to slap an adhesive patch onto the alien's shoulder before dancing away. You stick things to me now? Thexvar asked, examining the patch with amusement. How is this supposed to defeat me? It's not, G1 admitted. But now I know how your skin feels, how much pressure it takes to make contact, and how you react to unexpected touch. The watching Velkans were murmuring among themselves. This wasn't the kind of battle they were used to seeing. Usually their champions ended fights with a few spectacular strikes. This human was turning their trial into something strange and unpredictable. Thexvar's eyes narrowed. You are learning from me. That's what humans do, G1 replied. We learn, we adapt. We get better. Then let me teach you about pain. The fourth attack was different from the others. Thexvar didn't go for a quick kill. Instead, he began systematically trying to wound and weaken his opponent. The molecular blade sliced through the air in precise arcs designed to cut tendons and disable, rather than immediately kill. G1 found himself giving ground steadily. The alien was too fast, too skilled, too strong. But with each near miss, with each close call, he was gathering information. How did Thexvar telegraph his attacks? What patterns did he favor? Where were the tiny gaps in his perfect technique? A slash across G1's left arm drew first blood. The wound wasn't deep, but it sent a clear message. The alien could have killed him with that strike, but chose not to. Thexvar was playing with his prey. You bleed easily, small one, the alien observed. Perhaps you would prefer to yield now? Death is not required for this trial. Submission is acceptable. G1 looked at the blood running down his arm. Then he looked up at his team watching from the platform. Minji had her hands pressed to her mouth in horror. Donghyuk was frantically checking his scanner readings. Sokmin looked ready to vomit. Hayari was already preparing medical supplies. No, G1 said quietly. No submission. He pulled out his mirror and angled it to catch the overhead lights. The reflected beam flashed across Thexvar's eyes for just an instant, but it was enough to make the alien blink and turn his head. In that tiny window of opportunity, G1 moved. Not to attack, but to position himself better. He had been slowly herding Thexvar toward one side of the arena, where the metallic sand was deeper and less stable. Clever again, Thexvar acknowledged, but cleverness will not save you from this. The alien's next series of attacks came faster and more aggressive than anything before. G1 couldn't dodge them all. The molecular blade opened cuts on his shoulder, his thigh, his ribs. Each wound was precisely placed to cause pain and blood loss without immediately disabling him. But something strange was happening. The watching Velkans had grown quiet. Their expected quick victory was stretching into long minutes of actual combat. This human refused to die quickly and cleanly. Instead, he kept moving, kept adapting, kept finding new ways to avoid immediate death. More importantly, Thexvar was beginning to breathe harder. Donghyuk's scans had been right. The alien was built for explosive power, not sustained effort. Every lightning-fast attack was costing him energy that he wasn't used to spending. Why won't you die properly? Thexvar demanded, frustration creeping into his voice. G1 smiled despite the pain from his wounds. Blood ran down his face from a cut on his forehead, but his eyes remained focused and determined. Because I'm human, he replied. We don't die properly. We die stubbornly. The fight had been going on for over 10 minutes now. In Velkan combat trials, that was an eternity. Most battles ended within the first 30 seconds. The watching aliens shifted restlessly on their platform. This was not going according to their expectations. Jiwan moved differently now than he had at the beginning. His body was covered in precise cuts from Thexvar's blade. Blood stained the metallic sand around his feet. But his movements had become more fluid, more efficient. He was learning to read his opponent's attacks with increasing accuracy. Thexvar, meanwhile, was showing signs of strain. His breathing had become noticeably heavier. His perfect scales were dulled with perspiration. The molecular blade still hummed with deadly energy, but his strikes lacked their initial explosive speed. "You should be dead," the alien said between attacks. "I have cut you 17 times. Any of those wounds should have ended this." "Probably," Jiwan agreed, using his rope to create another tripline trap. "But humans are hard to kill. We evolved on a world that kept trying to eliminate us. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, predators with bigger teeth and claws than us. We survived by being too stubborn to die when we should." Thexvar lunged again, but this time Jiwan was ready. He had been watching for this exact attack pattern. As the alien committed to his strike, Jiwan dropped low and swept with his leg. It wasn't enough to knock Thexvar down, but it disrupted his balance at the crucial moment. The molecular blade passed inches from Jiwan's head. In the same motion, he grabbed the alien's extended arm and used his body weight to redirect Thexvar's momentum. The alien stumbled forward and Jiwan slapped another adhesive patch onto his back. "More patches?" Thexvar asked with irritation. "What purpose do they serve?" "Tracking," Jiwan replied. "I can feel exactly where you are now, even when I can't see you clearly." It was true. The adhesive patches contained microsensors that fed data to his tactical display. He could track Thexvar's position and movement even in the arena's shifting shadows. But more importantly, the patches were having a psychological effect. Thexvar kept trying to remove them, wasting energy and attention on a threat that wasn't actually dangerous. It was a classic misdirection technique. "You fight without honor," Thexvar accused. "These tricks and deceptions are the tools of cowards." "They're the tools of survivors," Jiwan corrected. "Honor is a luxury for species that can afford to lose." The next series of exchanges pushed both fighters to their limits. Thexvar's attacks were still devastatingly fast, but they had lost some of their precision. Fatigue was beginning to affect his judgment. Jiwan's wounds were slowing him down, but his tactical awareness had never been sharper. He began to notice patterns in Thexvar's footwork. The alien favored certain combinations of strikes. After particularly aggressive attacks, he had a tendency to pause for a fraction of a second to assess the results. These tiny habits were vulnerabilities that a human could exploit. "You're learning too quickly," Thexvar observed with something that might have been respect. "Most prey stops learning when the pain begins. But you study me even as I cut you." "Pain is just information," Jiwan replied, dodging another slash that opened a line across his chest. "It tells me what doesn't work. Everything else is data I can use." From the viewing platform, his team watched with a mixture of horror and growing hope. Minji had her hands clenched so tightly her knuckles were white. Dongyuk was taking continuous readings of both fighters. Seokmin was analyzing the arena's structure for anything that might help. Hyeri had given up preparing medical supplies and was simply praying. War Prime Kelthor leaned forward on his platform. This battle was lasting far longer than any trial in recorded Velkan history. The human should have been dead many times over, yet he continued to fight with increasing effectiveness. "Something is wrong," Kelthor muttered to recorder Vexthon. "Thexvar has never struggled this long against any opponent." "The human fights unlike any species we have encountered," Vexthon replied, his recording devices capturing every moment. "He does not try to match our strength. Instead, he turns our strength against us." On the arena floor, both fighters were reaching their breaking points. Jiwan's vision was starting to blur from blood loss. His left arm was nearly useless from accumulated damage. But Thexvar was gasping for air now, his explosive movement bursts becoming shorter and less frequent. "I will end this," Thexvar declared, raising his blade for what was clearly intended to be a finishing strike. "Enough games. Enough learning. Time for death." He gathered himself for one final devastating attack. Every ounce of his remaining strength and speed went into this single perfect strike. The molecular blade carved through the air in a killing arc that no living creature should have been able to avoid. But Jiwan didn't try to avoid it completely. Instead, he did something that violated every survival instinct in the galaxy. He deliberately moved into the path of the blade. accepting a severe wound to his shoulder in order to get inside Thexvar's guard. The alien's eyes widened in shock as Jiwan grabbed his extended arm with both hands. The human used the rope still tight around his waist to bind their arms together. In the same motion, he triggered the release on all his remaining adhesive patches, creating a sticky web that entangled both their movements. "What are you doing?" Thexvar demanded, struggling against the improvised restraints. "Winning," Jiwan replied through gritted teeth. They were locked together now, face to face. Thexvar was stronger and could eventually break free, but it would take time. Time he didn't have. His explosive fighting style had depleted his energy reserves. His muscles were cramping. His perfect technique meant nothing at this range. Jiwan, meanwhile, still had his composite knife. At close range, with his opponent restrained and exhausted, even a simple human blade could be deadly. But he didn't strike for a killing blow. Instead, he pressed the knife against Thexvar's throat just hard enough to draw a single drop of blood. "Yield," he said quietly. Thexvar stared into Jiwan's eyes. What he saw there made him freeze completely. Not the desperate fury of a cornered animal, not the cold calculation of a professional killer, but something far more terrifying. He saw the patient, enduring gaze of a species that had survived by outlasting everything else on their world. A species that didn't need to be faster or stronger because they simply refused to give up. A species that would keep fighting, keep adapting, keep learning until their opponents made the fatal mistake of underestimating human stubbornness. For the first time in his life, Thexvar understood what it meant to face a predator more dangerous than himself. Not because humans were superior warriors, but because they were something the galaxy had never seen before. They were a species that could lose every battle and still win the war. Slowly, carefully, Thexvar lowered his blade. The arena fell into absolute silence. In the entire history of the Velkan Empire, no champion had ever yielded in a trial of blades. It simply didn't happen. "I yield," Thexvar said clearly. "The human has proven his strength." Jiwan released his grip and stepped back. His legs almost gave out from exhaustion and blood loss, but he remained standing. Around the arena, both species stared in stunned disbelief. Humanity had just done the impossible. They had defeated the undefeatable. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Jiwan swayed on his feet, blood dripping steadily onto the metallic sand. His wounds were serious but not immediately fatal. Thexvar stood motionless, his blade retracted, staring at the human who had accomplished the impossible. War Prime Kelthor rose slowly from his platform. In all his years of leadership, through countless trials and conquests, he had never witnessed anything like this. His greatest champion, undefeated across 12 species, had yielded to a creature barely half his size. "The trial is complete," Kelthor announced, his voice carrying clearly through the arena. "The human has proven his species' strength. By the ancient laws of the Velkan Empire, humanity is recognized as a warrior race worthy of respect." The other Velkans began making low rumbling sounds that Jiwan realized were expressions of approval, not the hissing laughter from before, but genuine acknowledgement of what they had witnessed. Yeri rushed down from the viewing platform, her medical kit already open. She reached Jiwan just as his legs finally gave out. He collapsed to one knee, finally allowing his body to acknowledge the damage it had sustained. "Don't move," she ordered, running a scanner over his wounds. "You have 17 separate lacerations, possible internal bleeding, and definite signs of shock. How are you even conscious?" "Stubborn," Jiwan managed to reply with a weak smile. Thexvar approached them slowly. His own breathing was still labored, and his scales showed the dull coloration that indicated exhaustion, but his yellow eyes held something new, something that hadn't been there at the beginning of their fight. "You fought well, human," he said formally. "I have battled champions from many species. None have challenged me as you did." "You're a formidable opponent," Jiwan replied, accepting Hieri's help to stand. "I've never faced anything like your speed and skill." "Yet you defeated me," Thexvar observed. "How? I am stronger, faster, more experienced in combat. My blade is superior to yours. By all logic, you should have died within moments." Jiwan looked around the arena. His team was gathering around him with expressions of relief and amazement. The Velkans watched from their platforms with obvious curiosity. This was a teaching moment that could shape relations between their species for generations. "You're right about being stronger and faster," he acknowledged. "If this had been the fight you expected, I would have lost quickly. But I didn't give you the fight you expected. Explain, War Prime Kelthor called from above. Our records will show that humans defeated our champion through superior strategy. But we must understand how this was possible. Dongyuk stepped forward with his scanner still active. May I present our findings, Captain? Jiwan nodded, grateful for the chance to sit down while his xenobiologist explained. The Velkan physiology is optimized for explosive combat, Dongyuk began, displaying his data on a portable screen. Incredible power and speed, but limited endurance. They're built like the great cats of Earth. Perfect for quick kills, but not for extended hunts. Humans evolved differently, Minji added, her cultural training finally proving useful. We're persistence hunters. We survived by chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We turned every hunt into a marathon. Captain Jiwan applied this evolutionary advantage to combat, Sokman explained, showing his structural analysis of the fight. Every moment the battle lasted increased his chances of victory. He wasn't trying to win quickly. He was trying to last long enough for his opponent's advantages to become disadvantages. Thexvar listened to the explanation with growing understanding. You were studying me, learning my patterns, waiting for fatigue to affect my performance. Every species has strengths and weaknesses, Jiwan said. Your strength is overwhelming power in short bursts. Our strength is adaptation over time. I couldn't match your abilities, so I changed the nature of the fight itself. Recorder Vex then activated his holographic display again. This represents a completely new form of combat doctrine in our records. Most species try to maximize their existing advantages. Humans instead minimize their opponent's advantages while creating new conditions that favor their own abilities. Tactical flexibility, observed Kelthor with something approaching admiration. You turned our champion's greatest strengths into sources of vulnerability. We also learned something important about Velkan culture, Minji added carefully. You value strength, but you define strength in terms of direct combat prowess. Humans have a broader definition that includes endurance, adaptation, and tactical innovation. The War Prime descended from his platform to stand before the humans. Up close, he was even more imposing than before, but his aggressive posture had changed to something more respectful. In our empire, species are classified as prey, weak predators, or strong predators, he explained. But humans do not fit any of these categories. You have shown us something we have never encountered before. What would you call us? Jiwan asked. Kelthor considered the question for several moments. Survivors, not in the prey sense of hiding from danger, but in the predator sense of thriving despite any challenge. You are apex survivors, Thexvar nodded in agreement. I have fought many warriors, but you are the first to defeat me through sheer refusal to be defeated. Your species does not know when to quit. That's both our greatest strength and our greatest weakness, Hieri observed while continuing to treat Jiwan's wounds. We don't give up even when maybe we should. Today it was definitely a strength, Jiwan said. War Prime Kelthor straightened to his full imposing height. By the laws of combat trial, humanity has earned the right of treaty with the Velkan Empire. You will be treated as equals in all diplomatic relations. Your ships may travel through our territory. Your merchants may trade in our markets. Your knowledge may be shared with our scientists. And our people may learn from yours, Minji added hopefully. Indeed, Kelthor agreed. I am particularly interested in your combat doctrines. Our warriors could benefit from understanding human tactical flexibility. Our Marines would be honored to train alongside Velkan champions, Jiwan replied. We have much to learn from each other. Recorder Vexthon was busy documenting everything. This will be remembered as the day the Empire encountered its first apex survivor species. The implications for our expansion policies are significant. How so? Dongyuk asked. We have always conquered through superior force, Vexthon explained. But humans have shown us that there are forms of strength we do not possess. This suggests there may be other survivor species in the galaxy that we have underestimated. Thexvar moved closer to Jiwan. I have a request, human warrior. What is it? I wish to learn your fighting methods. Not to defeat you, but to understand how adaptation and persistence can overcome seemingly impossible odds. Will you teach me? Jiwan looked at the alien who had nearly killed him just minutes before. Now Thexvar was asking to become a student rather than an enemy. I'll teach you what I can, Jiwan agreed. But the real lesson isn't about fighting techniques. It's about never accepting that defeat is inevitable. Then teach me that as well, Thexvar requested. As Hieri finished treating the worst of his wounds, Jiwon looked around the arena one more time. The metallic sand was stained with his blood. The walls bore scorch marks from Thexvar's molecular blade. But more importantly, the watching faces of both species showed a new understanding. Humans and Velkans were different in almost every way imaginable, but they could respect each other's unique forms of strength. They could learn from each other. They could build something better together than either could achieve alone. So what happens now? Seokmin asked. Now we go home, Jiwon replied, and we tell Earth that humanity has its first true allies among the stars. War Prime Kelthor approached for a final exchange. Captain Jiwon of Earth, the Velkan Empire welcomes humanity to the galactic community. May your persistence serve you well among the stars. And may your strength protect us both from whatever challenges we face out there, Jiwon replied. As the two leaders shook hands, human and Velkan alike understood that something historic had occurred. Not just first contact, but first friendship between species that couldn't be more different. The galaxy had just become a more interesting place. 3 months later, the news of humanity's first contact had reached every corner of Earth. The small research station Kepler 442 had become the most famous location in human space. Captain Jiwon found himself dealing with something he had never expected: celebrity status. He stood in the briefing room of Earth's diplomatic command, addressing a gathering of military leaders, scientists, and politicians. His arm was still in a recovery brace from the deepest of Thexvar's cuts, but the scars had become symbols of humanity's determination rather than marks of defeat. The Velkan Empire controls 12 star systems, he reported to the assembled officials. Their military technology is decades ahead of ours in some areas, particularly personal weapons and armor. But they've agreed to limited technology exchange programs. Admiral Chen, head of Earth's Space Defense Force, leaned forward. What about their expansion policies? Are they a threat to other human colonies? Not anymore, Jiwon replied. The trial changed their perspective fundamentally. They're reconsidering their classification system for alien species. Several worlds they previously conquered are being offered upgraded status based on our example. Dr. Park, Earth's leading xenobiologist, raised her hand. What have we learned about their biology? The data from specialist Donghyuk's scans could revolutionize our understanding of alien physiology. Donghyuk is working with Velkan scientists now, Jiwon explained. They're as curious about us as we are about them. Apparently, our endurance capabilities are even more unusual than we realized. Most galactic species are optimized for either explosive power or defensive hiding. We're the first they've met that's optimized for persistence. Minister Lee from the Foreign Affairs Department looked concerned. Are we sure this alliance is stable? What prevents them from changing their minds about us? Respect, Jiwon answered simply. Velkan culture is built on recognizing strength. Once they acknowledge someone is strong, that recognition becomes permanent. They don't go back on it. The questions continued for another hour. Everyone wanted to know everything about humanity's first alien allies, but Jiwon's mind kept drifting to the personal messages he had received from his team. Minji had been promoted to lead Earth's new Alien Cultural Studies department. Her analysis of Velkan society had become required reading for anyone involved in interspecies relations. She was currently preparing for a cultural exchange mission to the Velkan homeworld. Donghyuk had found his calling working directly with alien scientists. His biological research was helping both species understand the incredible diversity of life in the galaxy. The Velkans had introduced him to samples from 6 different worlds, each with unique evolutionary solutions to survival. Seokmin had become fascinated with Velkan engineering principles. Their technology relied on biological integration in ways that human science was only beginning to understand. He was leading a joint engineering project to develop new ship designs that combined human innovation with Velkan biotechnology. Kieri had perhaps the most challenging assignment. She was developing medical protocols for treating injuries that occurred between species with completely different physiologies. Her emergency treatment of Jiwon's wounds had become a case study in cross-species medicine. Captain Jiwon, called a voice from the back of the room. What about Thexvar? The reports say he's requested permanent assignment to Earth. Is that accurate? Jiwon smiled. That was still one of the most surprising developments from their first contact. Thexvar has asked to study human combat doctrines and survival techniques. He's particularly interested in our military history and psychological resilience training. A Velkan warrior wants to learn from humans? Admiral Chen sounded skeptical. He says the trial opened his eyes to forms of strength he had never considered, Jiwan explained. Velkans are natural warriors, but they've never faced opponents who could turn disadvantage into advantage the way humans do. He wants to understand how we develop that capability. The truth was more complex than Jiwan could explain in an official briefing. Thexvar had become genuinely fascinated with human persistence. The alien warrior had spent weeks studying Earth's history, particularly humanity's ability to survive ice ages, natural disasters, and their own tendency toward warfare. Your species is remarkable, Thexvar had told him during one of their training sessions. Most creatures adapt to their environment. Humans adapt their environment to themselves. When that fails, you adapt yourselves to survive impossible conditions. You are evolution in action. We're also incredibly stubborn, Jiwan had replied. Yes, Thexvar had agreed with that hissing laugh. Magnificently, terrifyingly stubborn. The briefing was winding down when Minister Li asked the most important question of all. What's next, Captain? How do we build on this first contact success? Jiwan had been thinking about that question for months. The Velkans have introduced us to the broader galactic community. There are dozens of species out there, each with their own strengths and challenges. Some are peaceful traders, others are territorial and aggressive. A few are completely alien in ways we can't even imagine yet. He activated a holographic display showing the local galactic region. Red dots marked Velkan territory. Blue dots showed human colonies. Green areas indicated neutral zones where first contact might be possible. Our alliance with the Velkans gives us credibility with other species, he continued. But each new contact will require the same careful approach we used with them. We need to understand what we're dealing with before we make assumptions. Are you volunteering for more first contact missions? Asked Admiral Chen. If needed, Jiwan replied without hesitation. But I hope we won't need dramatic trials every time. The Velkans have agreed to introduce us to species they consider suitable for human contact. Peaceful negotiations are always preferable to combat trials. Dr. Park looked thoughtful. The psychological implications are fascinating. Humans have always wondered if we were alone in the universe. Now we know we're not just not alone, but we're apparently unique in ways we never imagined. How so? Minister Li asked. Our persistence, our adaptability, our refusal to accept defeat, Dr. Park explained. According to Velkan records, no other species has these traits in combination. Most evolved toward either specialized dominance or specialized survival. Humans evolved toward generalized stubbornness. Is that good or bad? Someone called out. It's useful, Jiwan answered. It means we bring something to the galactic community that no one else can offer. We're the species that doesn't give up. In a universe full of challenges, that might be exactly what everyone needs. As the briefing ended and officials began filing out, Admiral Chen approached Jiwan privately. Off the record, Captain. Do you think humanity is ready for what's out there? Jiwan considered the question carefully. I think we're as ready as we can be without experiencing it directly. We have good allies now. We've proven we can earn respect, even from species that are physically superior to us. Most importantly, we've learned that being human isn't a disadvantage in the galaxy. It's just different. Different how? Most species seem to have evolved specialized strategies for survival, Jiwan explained. The Velkans became perfect warriors. Other species became perfect traders, or perfect builders, or perfect hiders. Humans became perfect survivors. We didn't specialize in any one thing. We specialized in surviving everything. Admiral Chen nodded slowly. And that makes us valuable? It makes us necessary, Jiwan corrected. The galaxy is full of specialized species facing challenges that their specializations can't solve. They need someone who can adapt to anything, learn from anyone, and refuse to quit when things get impossible. Someone like us. Exactly like us. Later that evening, Jiwan received a message from Thexvar aboard the Velkin ship, still docked at Kepler 442. The alien warrior had spent the day studying human military history and had questions about something called the Battle of Stalingrad. "How did your species survive being surrounded, outnumbered, and outgunned for months?" Thexvar asked during their video call. "By all logical analysis, the defenders should have surrendered or died within weeks." "They were protecting their home," Jiwan explained. "Humans fight differently when we're protecting something we care about. We become even more stubborn than usual." But the conditions were impossible. Starvation, disease, constant bombardment, overwhelming enemy forces. Any rational creature would have accepted defeat. "Humans aren't always rational," Jiwan admitted. "Sometimes we're too stubborn to be smart. But sometimes being too stubborn to quit is the smartest thing you can do." Thexvar was quiet for a moment. "I am beginning to understand why the Empire needs alliance with humanity. We have strength, but you have something more valuable. You have the strength to keep fighting when strength alone is not enough." "We have backup plans for our backup plans," Jiwan agreed. "And when those fail, we make new plans. And when we can't make plans, we improvise. And when we can't improvise, we endure. And when we can't endure, we become more stubborn." "Your species terrifies me," Thexvar said with what sounded like admiration. "In the best possible way." As Jiwan prepared for sleep that night, he thought about the future. Humanity had taken its first steps into a larger universe. They had proven themselves worthy of respect and alliance. But more importantly, they had learned that being human was not just adequate for life among the stars. It was essential. The galaxy needed survivors. It needed a species that could adapt to anything, endure everything, and refuse to accept that any challenge was truly impossible. It needed creatures stubborn enough to keep trying when everyone else gave up. It needed humans. And humanity was ready to show the universe exactly what that meant.